You could imagine that you're pulling kids from other communities and bringing them into one and put them in a residential school, so only a certain amount of kids are taken away. But when you come to a community where the school is resided, the whole community is brought to that school. We suffered.
Thanks.
You know, let's not forget about the hospitals that were run by the Roman missionaries. Naming the Charles Campbell Hospital. A lot of our kids from Fort Chip, when they were sick, taken from their parents, were sent to Charles Campbell Hospital, never to return. Don't know where they are today. And why I say that? Because my wife, her brother, was taken in a 60 scoop and was sick in Fort Chip. Never to return home. As mothers, could you understand what went through the minds of my mother-in-law? My mother, she's 90 years old and she's in continuous care at Willow Square right now. When I was born in Charles Campbell Hospital in 1966, she gave birth to me. Like every mother should. When you give birth to a child, you should hang on to that child and comfort that child, because that is the covenant of life. But when I was born, my mother died. She died at 36 years old. She told me the story that you gave me a hard time, my baby. When you were born, I died. I didn't get to hold you. She was robbed of her baby's gift of life. And I lived for 6 years with my mother. And she told me the story that when I was born, she said that when she was revived and came back to life, the nuns at Charles Campbell Hospital said to her, "We want to take your baby. Give him to us." My mother said, "I got to talk to my husband." So she called my dad, Alec Bruno. And he was summoned to go to the nurse station. He went there and there was a call made. It was my mom. My mom told my dad that they wanted to take baby. My dad said, "No, you bring baby home." Even though she didn't hold on to me at birth, but she brought me home. 6 years later, you gotta remember, when you're put into residential school, at the later days, not like the early ones, if your parents weren't with you, if you had no parents, you were put in residential school at the age of 1, no matter how old you were. But the legal age of being put in a residential school was 6 years old. 6 years after I was born, I wanted to go to school, Bishop Bishop School. I was so excited to go to school because I was born in September 28th. So I wasn't 6 years old when school started. I was only 11 months. But they accepted me into school. I remember one of the students told me by my nickname, Yayo, what are you doing inside the bus? I said, I'm going to school. You're not old enough, get off. I said, no, I'm gonna go. For 1 month I rode the bus to school. Come October, I don't know what was said, but I remember the time when the nun came to the house and talked to my mom. And then one day, my mom told me, she said, let's go for a walk. I said, where? Let's go for a walk across Doghead. I went with my mom and I walked with her. And she was telling me all these things. And as we walked over the hill, "6 years old, hanging on to my mom, walking down that hill." And she said, "My boy, it's going to be your home." This time I couldn't let go. My mom kept walking me. And when we walked to the Holy Angel School, you know, when I told the story of when my mom gave birth to me, and she didn't held me at a birth, could you imagine how she felt when she had to give me away to the nuns when I was 6 years old? And I'm screaming, "Mom, don't let me go." And I'm not at birth where I'm crying for life. I am crying for, "Mom, don't let me go." And she let me go. And I struggled. Within an hour, all the boys summoned like this before us. And they sat me down. The first thing they did was cut my hair. Took my spirit. I didn't know what was going on, and when I seen my brothers, I went to them. And I started talking in my language, and then my brother told me, "Don't talk like that. Don't say nothing. Whatever happens here, keep it to yourself." I did not know what was going to happen to me. It wasn't long before I had my encounters with the abusers. You know, and I asked that question, and you as mothers have to answer this one. How many tears do you think my mother cried going home after leaving her baby again, and not even given the chance to hold her baby at birth? And she's across the street today, 90 years old. I have a hard time visiting her because of COVID. What about all the elders that are home today? In the last 3.5 weeks, ever since the 215 bodies were discovered, they say, when my elder called me and said, It's sickening, isn't it? 215 bodies. I said, what are you talking about? You didn't watch the news? I said, no. 3 days after the story broke, I turned the TV on and I started watching TV. My world turned upside down as a chief. I couldn't understand why I was so angry, why I couldn't work with anybody anymore. It was because of the feelings that what happened to us at residential school. You hear of the stories that goes on in residential schools, how people were abused. You know, we're proudly residents of Fort McMurray. Probably Joe knows this, because my brother's at his age. Father Turcotte, the school that you walk down Franklin, that some of us send our kids to. Father Turcotte was in Fort Chip, and he was a brother. Father Turcotte, the boys called him Father Jerkoff. And yet, they honor him when we walk the streets of Fort McMurray. So, when the government says they are going to exterminate the Aboriginal people, and I was at the Chief's meeting for the last 3 days, and I came back yesterday, and Grand Chief Noski from Treaty 8, he spoke to us yesterday, and he said, I once spoke to the bishop, and I asked him, why did you guys did this to our people? The bishop's response was, if we did not take you in, the Canadian government would have exterminated you all. So this has nothing to do with the Catholics or the Protestants or the Baptists or all Christianity. This was an act of government, genocide to our people, the people of Turtle Island. Don't ever think it only happened in Canada. It happened in America. They even did it to their own people in Ireland. If you watch a documentary of what they did to them, you will hear the same stories of what we tell here today. We are not alone. When I came out of residential school and when I carried on with my life and everything and stuff like that, I rebelled. I rebelled big time, yes. And I felt good about it. What saved me was my elders. Because my mom and dad took me in the bush. And when I seen the elders all gather and they start talking, I guess they were planning out what they were going to do. And I listened. I asked my mom what they're saying. As a little kid, my mom would say, stay quiet, just listen. Till today, I still listen to our elders and I still hear their voices. There is one age category younger than me that are the survivors of the Holy Angels Residential School in Fort Chip. And a lot of kids from out of Fort Chip did not make it home. Some of our kids from Fort Chip did not make it home. But we know where they are. We always knew where they were. We are the survivors. Some of you are first generation, some of you are second generation, some of you are third generation. Chief Fredley Marcel, who was the hereditary chief of ACFN, was asked a question: what would it take for all this to go away? He said it would take 3 generations. My daughter, my grandkid, my great-grandchildren. And I'm only 54. My grandchildren are only 12 to 7 years old. By the time the next ones are born, I'll probably be about 70. And when I perish, the legacy of residential school will be at the hands of my great-grandchild. And what he does from there, or what she does from there, is her own life. But what we vow today is that we will never allow this to happen again. When we ask of you to stay away from all the drugs and alcohol and everything, it's because we don't want what's going to happen to your kids what happened to us. Because there is a system. And residential school still carries on today with the Child and Family Services of Alberta. When our kids are put in the system, they are being abused by the people that are looking after them. And that's no word of a lie. Because a young boy at the age of 25 at the gathering came up to us and spoke to us. He said, I am a survivor of Child and Family Services, and what they did to you in residential school, they did to us at those homes. So don't ever think that it has stopped because the residential school has closed. It continues on today. Don't lay blame on the Catholic Church. Don't lay blame on the Protestants or the Anglicans or the Baptists or whatever. This was an act of genocide by the Canadian government, and the Canadian government has to answer to the world, not to us. We've been saying it all along, what they did to us, and nobody believed us. Now, I could say I walk in peace now. I was abused, I was raped. I was raped at the residential school, and I was raped at day school. And people ask, themselves, like, how did Chief do it? I vowed to myself that I would never allow this to happen to my kids, and I would never allow this to happen to our people again. I couldn't understand one day when Justice St. Clair did the Truth and Reconciliation, and I was in Fort Chip. Me and my wife were just driving in a vehicle, and I was just happy, and I was just smiling away, and all of a sudden Justice St. Clair came on the radio and started talking about residential school. I was by the old folks' home. The radio was turned on. I started to cry. My wife looked at me and said, "What's wrong?" It was that. Listen, Han. Till today, my mom never told me how many tears she cried on our way home. Because when I came out of residential school, like everybody else did, we walked into a community that was totally broken. 9 years old, started drinking, started smoking, started sniffing glue. At 9. What would do that to a kid? What did I have to bury? Till today, I'm happy to see my elders, and I still laugh, and but that was the past. And I say that it will never happen to us again. And we try to provide, and as a leader, I always ask this one question. If you had an option of letting your kid go as a father, let alone as a mother, would you give him in the care of somebody else? Not me. I will not do that. It's hardship that we have to go through. And it's going to get harder. People want to know where the bodies are in Fort Chip. They want to start doing the ground penetration and everything. They are there. But there are many of them that won't be there because the babies that were born wrapped in white cloth, hear them cry, never hear them again, because they will put themselves in furnace. These are the stories that we hear from back home. We are not liars. We never lied. I don't lie. I was told to tell the truth. They could hide behind closed doors. They could hide behind policy. Canada, how you view yourself from here on in for wars of crimes against the indigenous people, for genocide, you will have to answer it, not us. We are the survivors, and we will tell the story of what happened to us. So be proud. Be proud of your heritage. Be proud of your ancestry. Be proud of the Aboriginal that you have inside of you. Because we are the survivors. We are the survivors, and you are the product of the survivors of today. Every one of you is here are the product of residential school survivors, and don't ever forget that. And Canada has to answer for what they did to our ancestors, and what they did to me, and what they did to everybody continuing on in Child and Family Services today. My name is Allan. I'm the chief of the Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation and the president of the Athabasca Tribal Council. And as long as I am the chief, this issue will not go away, and we will come to the conclusion of bringing our child home, because every child matters and every child should come home. And that is the word of our elders.